Health influencer sister claims the only way I can make it to her wedding is if I can lose a certain amount of weight before her wedding. Otherwise I can stay at home and be sorry for myself for missing out, so I choose the latter, but turns out so did everyone including her own groom. Now she's begging me come to her wedding because that's the only way she could even have a wedding now. I, Emma, was fat. I was bullied a lot, none more than my own sister. My sister Bonnie was extremely mean to me, and honestly, she's one of the main reasons why I had such a bad relationship with food. Over the years, I've tried my best to get away from her as much as possible. I do still see her at family gatherings because, well, family drama isn't really my thing, and avoiding her completely isn't an option. Here's the kicker, Bonnie is now a health influencer. Yep, the same person who used to make me feel like I wasn't worthy of anything because of my weight, now spends her time on Instagram sharing healthy lifestyle tips. Not that she has any real qualifications, she did some random online health and wellness course. I don't know which one specifically, but it's probably the kind that also sells you overpriced essential oils and tells you that crystals can cure migraines. She's even convinced that COVID could have been treated with just ginger and turmeric tea. Needless to say, she doesn't have a lot of followers. So recently, Bonnie got engaged. Great for her, I guess. Except she asked me to be one of her bridesmaids. I'll be honest, I was floored. Like, why would she even want me up there standing next to her? We haven't had a real conversation in years, and the last time we tried it ended with her saying something passive-aggressive about my poor life choices. I'm pretty sure our mom guilt tripped her into asking. Mom's big on family unity even when it doesn't make sense. I didn't want to cause any trouble because, again, family drama exhausts me, so I said yes. Do I want to? Absolutely not. Did I prepare myself for her inevitable tantrums and controlling behavior? You bet I did. And boy, did she deliver. First of all, Bonnie had this whole vision for her wedding. Rustic, chic, glam, whatever that means. She sent us a Pinterest board with like 200 pins, and I swear 90% of it was mason jars and fairy lights. She wanted us bridesmaids to wear these pastel pink dresses that looked like they were designed for 12-year-olds going to prom. The material was so flimsy, it clung to everything. When I tried mine on, I felt like a sausage stuffed into a satin casing. I told Bonnie it made me uncomfortable. And her response? Well, maybe if you tried harder at the gym it wouldn't be an issue. Yep, classic Bonnie. I didn't even fight her on it because honestly, what's the point? I just figured I'd deal with it for one day and never wear that dress again. But then came the bachelorette party. Oh my god, the bachelorette party. Bonnie decided we should go on this wellness retreat for the weekend. It was in the middle of nowhere in the itinerary, including sunrise yoga, juicing workshops, and something called a chakra alignment ceremony. I knew it was going to be a disaster from the moment we arrived. The place had no cell service, and the only food they served was raw vegan cuisine. Have you ever tried to survive on kale chips and carrot juice for 3 days? I do not recommend it. Bonnie, of course, was in her element. She spent the entire weekend lecturing us about how sugar is poison and how she hasn't eaten gluten in 3 years. Meanwhile, I was sneaking protein bars out of my suitcase like a criminal. At one point, one of the other bridesmaids, who also wasn't thrilled about the whole cleanse thing, whispered to me, "Do you think they'd notice if we ordered pizza?" I swear, that was the only moment I genuinely smiled all weekend. But she crossed the line when she texted me out of the blue saying I could only come to her wedding if I lost a certain amount of weight beforehand. Otherwise, I could stay at home and feel sorry for myself. Yep. She actually said that, in a text message. I remember staring at my phone trying to process those words like, what? Did she seriously just say that to me? The audacity, the cruelty, it felt like I'd been sucker punched. Here's the thing. Bonnie knows about my history with food and body image. She knows about the years I spent hating my reflection, starving myself, binge eating and then feeling guilty and spiraling back into another round of self-loathing. I've worked so hard to get to a place where I actually like myself. I eat well, I move my body and I feel strong. I might not have abs but I'm healthy. I'm happy, and even that wasn't enough for her. She didn't care that I was in a better mental space than I'd been in years. All she cared about was how I'd look in her wedding photos. And let me tell you, that stung. At first, I considered texting back something snarky like, okay, I'll lose 50 pounds of dead weight by cutting you out of my life. But I didn't. Instead I took a deep breath, let myself cry a little. Okay, a lot. And then I made a decision. I wasn't going to let her words undo all the work I'd done on myself. I wasn't going to let her dictate my self-worth. So I texted her back, short and simple, I won't be attending your wedding. I wish you all the best. And that was it. At first, I felt relieved. But then the overthinking started. A little voice in my head whispered, what if she did this on purpose? What if she never wanted you there in the first place? And this was her way of getting you to back out so that she could play the victim? And honestly, I still think that might be true. Bonnie has always been the type of person who wants things to go exactly her way. If she thought I'd ruin her aesthetic, she'd rather I not show up at all. And instead of being upfront about it, she decided to manipulate me into making that choice for her. I wasn't going to let this go. Nope. I wasn't going to sit quietly and let Bonnie prance around in her overpriced yoga pants acting like she's some kind of health guru while treating me like garbage. I wanted to be petty, like full-on salt-of-the-earth petty. So I decided the best way to handle this was to show everyone just how mean and fake this so-called health influencer really is. I was angry and honestly, I wasn't thinking straight. Anger has a funny way of clouding your brain and making terrible ideas seem like genius master plans. And listen, I'm not proud of what I did next, but at the time it felt right. It felt justified. Here's the thing. Barney's fiancé Dan used to be fat too. Like properly overweight. He had his own struggles, went on his own fitness journey, and now he's a personal trainer. And credit where it's due, the guy looks great. He's genuinely passionate about helping other people get fit. And unlike Bonnie, he's not insufferable about it. But you know what Dan doesn't know? Just how cruel Bonnie can be. Bonnie's entire health influencer personality online is all about positivity and self-love. She posts captions like, "Everybody is beautiful. Fitness is a journey, not a destination, and kindness is free." Sprinkle that everywhere. Meanwhile, in real life, she's telling her own sister to lose weight or stay home and rot in self-pity. The hypocrisy was eating me alive. So I snapped. I went through my old messages, screenshots, photos, everything. I compiled every mean thing Bonnie had ever said to me about my weight, every passive-aggressive comment she'd made, and every downright nasty text she'd sent over the years. It wasn't hard. Bonnie had been freely offering her unsolicited opinions on my body for most of my life. And then I sent it all to Dan. Yeah, I know. But in my rage-fueled brain, this was justice. Dan deserved to know who he was marrying, right? And if Bonnie wanted to play the perfect little influencer, she could deal with the consequences of being exposed for who she really was. My message to Dan was blunt. I told him I was planning to post everything online to let Bonnie's followers see the real Bonnie. I even drafted a whole Instagram post, complete with screenshots and a heartfelt caption. It was brutal. Dan called me almost immediately. And when I say called, I mean blew up my phone. Back-to-back calls, voicemails, texts. I ignored every single one. I wasn't ready to hear him defend her. I didn't want him to try and smooth things over. And then Bonnie started calling me over and over again. At first, I didn't pick up, but then she started texting. First, it was her usual, "Emma, stop being dramatic." Then it turned into, "You're going to ruin my life, Emma." And finally, "Please, Emma, please don't do this. I'll do anything." You guys, I'd never seen Bonnie beg for anything in her life, ever. The girl could probably get a flat tire in the middle of the desert and still act like it was someone else's fault. But now she was begging me. Apparently Dan had made it very clear to her she needed to fix things with me or their whole influencer image thing was going to crumble. He told her flat out that he wouldn't go into this marriage with unresolved drama hanging over their heads. I can't lie, part of me felt satisfied seeing her squirm. But another part of me started to feel guilty. Look, I know Bonnie sucks. I know she's been cruel to me for years. But airing out her dirty laundry online, potentially ruining her relationship and her career, that felt heavy, like maybe I had gone too far. And then my parents got involved because of course they did. My mom called me first. It wasn't even 5 seconds into the conversation before she hit me with the classic, "Emma, you need to let this go. Family is family." And then came the guilt tripping. Do you really want to ruin your sister's wedding over something so small? She's your sister, Emma. You two need to work this out. Small. Small? She literally told me I wasn't allowed at her wedding unless I lost weight. That's not small. That's vile. But my mom wasn't hearing it and neither was my dad. They both took Bonnie's side like they always do. The golden child strikes again. And honestly, that hurt more than Bonnie's original text. My parents knew how hard I had worked on myself. They knew about my struggles with food, body image, with self-worth, and yet they still brushed it all off to keep the peace with Bonnie. I don't know what to do next. Do you guys have any suggestions about what to do? Update 1. Okay, so last time I left you all hanging, things were super tense. Bonnie had apologized, well, kind of apologized, after the whole weight loss text disaster, and I decided to go to the wedding, but I refused to be in the bridal party. Honestly, that was my one non-negotiable boundary. I wasn't going to stand next to her in some pastel-colored nightmare dress, smiling like everything was fine when it very much was not. But I went. I put on a cute outfit, did my makeup, and reminded myself that this was her day, not mine. Plus, my parents had been acting like I was the villain in this whole situation, so showing up felt like a way to prove I was the bigger person. The wedding itself, honestly, it was fine. Bonnie had one of those ultra-trendy Instagram perfect weddings. You know the type? Mason jars, fairy lights, someone playing acoustic guitar during cocktail hour. Bonnie was in full influencer mode, of course. Every little moment was being documented for her Instagram stories. At one point, I overheard her telling the photographer, "Make sure to get my good side." Actually, every side is my good side. I mostly stayed out of her way, stuck with a group of cousins who were also semi-regularly annoyed by Bonnie, and stuffed my face with those tiny wedding appetizers. Dan, on the other hand, was super nice. Like, weirdly nice. Every time he'd pass me, he'd smile or give me an awkward thumbs up like, "Hey, sorry about the drama. Glad you're here." Poor guy had no idea what kind of chaos was waiting for him. Now, here's where things start to unravel. So apparently during the honeymoon, like literally during the honeymoon, some guy, let's call him Chad, because honestly it feels like a Chad thing to do, showed up at their fancy beach resort. Yep, Chad crashed their honeymoon. From what I've pieced together through family gossip and Bonnie's occasional unhinged Instagram posts, Chad is someone Bonnie had been seeing on the side for months, and apparently this guy was madly in love with her. So, Chad rolls up to their honeymoon all dramatic and emotional and basically drops a truth bomb on Dan. And Bonnie didn't even deny it, she just admitted everything right there on their honeymoon. Anyway, Dan was furious. He ended the honeymoon early, flew back home and apparently told Bonnie he wanted to separate immediately. I'm not sure if they're going for a divorce or an annulment. Honestly, at this point, it feels like it could go either way. But the wildest part, Bonnie came home and started spinning her version of the story on social media. She posted one of those black and white sad selfies with a caption like, "Sometimes love means letting go. Please respect our privacy during this difficult time." Girl, you cheated on your husband, on your honeymoon, and now you want people to send you sad face emojis and heartfelt DMs? My family is, of course, a mess about this. My mom is devastated. She's acting like Bonnie just got diagnosed with a life-threatening illness instead of, facing the consequences of her own actions. My dad has retreated into full "I'm just going to mow the lawn and pretend nothing is happening" mode. Update 2. I honestly didn't think I'd have another update so soon, but oh boy do I have some tea for you all. So remember Chad, the guy Bonnie cheated on Dan with? Yeah, well, turns out Chad wasn't just some random guy Bonnie met at a juice bar or whatever. Nope, Chad is actually, wait for it, the boyfriend of Bonnie's maid of honor. I'll let that sink in for a second. Yep, Bonnie was not only sneaking around with Chad before her wedding, but she was also doing this while smiling in photos next to her maid of honor. Let's call her Sarah, because, honestly, Sarah deserves her privacy. Sarah found out after the wedding, after the honeymoon disaster, and after Bonnie's sad Instagram breakup post. She found some messages between Bonnie and Chad on Chad's phone. So Sarah, being an absolute queen, decided she wasn't going to let this slide. She rolled up to Bonnie's house one evening, and, guys, it was chaos. From what I've pieced together, Sarah showed up with a carton of eggs, which she proceeded to hurl at Bonnie's front door, windows, and car. I'm talking full-on dramatic rom-com revenge scene levels of egging, but it didn't stop there. Oh, no. After her impromptu egg-throwing competition, Sarah apparently keyed Bonnie's car. Can we just take a moment to appreciate the level of rage Sarah must have felt? Because, honestly, if someone I trusted as my best friend was hooking up with my boyfriend behind my back and asked me to stand next to them at their wedding while they did it, yeah, I'd probably go full egg and keys mode too. Now here's where it gets even juicier. Apparently, some neighbors came out because, a woman screaming and throwing eggs isn't exactly subtle. The details get fuzzy here. Some relatives said Bonnie called the police. Others said the neighbors did. Either way, the police apparently showed up. From what I know, no one got arrested or anything. But Bonnie had to awkwardly explain to the officers why her car looked like it had been attacked by a breakfast buffet and why her ex-maid of honor was screaming at her in the middle of the street. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall for that conversation. Now, do I think Sarah maybe went a bit overboard? Sure. But also, can you really blame her? Bonnie not only betrayed her friendship, but also paraded around like nothing was wrong, asking Sarah to be her maid of honor. The audacity is honestly Olympic level. But, anyway, Bonnie has been in full damage control mode since then. She posted another cryptic Instagram story. Black background, white text, the vibe. It said something like, "Sometimes people hurt you because they're hurting too. Please remember to be kind." Ma'am, you can't drop fortune cookie wisdom on Instagram when you're the one out here ruining relationships like it's your full-time job. Meanwhile, Dan is done. Like absolutely done. He's already moved out of their shared apartment and is staying with his brother. I heard from one of my cousins that he's considering taking Bonnie to court over some joint expenses from the wedding and honeymoon. Apparently, She convinced him to pay for most of it because her influencer brand was going to blow up after the wedding content went viral. Spoiler alert, it did not blow up. Let's see what happens with all this drama. Update 3. Hi, everyone. Everyone who wanted to know about weight loss journey, here is my story. I have always been a fat kid. Like always, chubby cheeks, round belly, the whole package. And listen, being a fat kid isn't easy, especially when people around you love to remind you about it every 5 minutes. When I was younger, I didn't have a healthy relationship with food at all. Food was like my best friend and my worst enemy at the same time. I would try to starve myself because I thought skipping meals would magically make me skinny overnight. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Then, when the hunger got unbearable, I'd binge, and not in a cute, oops, I ate an extra slice of pizza kind of way. I'm talking full-blown eating an entire family-sized bag of chips followed by ice cream followed by whatever else was in the pantry kind of binge. And then the shame would hit me like a truck. It got so bad at one point that I weighed around 275 pounds. And honestly, I didn't even realize how bad it had gotten until one random Tuesday. I remember it so vividly. I had walked past a mirror in my hallway, caught a glimpse of myself and froze, like I actually stopped walking and just stared. I didn't recognize myself. I felt trapped in my own body. It wasn't even just about how I looked. It was how I felt, tired, sluggish, constantly out of breath. My knees ached when I walked up the stairs. I couldn't even tie my shoes without feeling like I might pass out. I wish I could sit here and tell you guys that I started my weight loss journey for all the right reasons. Like I wanted to be healthy, I wanted to feel strong, but no. Truth is, I just didn't like the person staring back at me in that mirror. I felt embarrassed, I felt ashamed, and I decided that day that I was going to change. And I did. Over the past 2 years, I've lost almost 80 pounds. That's right, 80 pounds freaking. And let me tell you, it wasn't some magical transformation where I woke up one day skinny and glowing. Nope, it was a grind, a daily grind. I had to unlearn so many toxic habits. I had to teach myself that food isn't evil and that exercise isn't punishment. At first, it was just walking. Literally just walking. Every day, I'd put on my sneakers, play a podcast, and walk until I felt like I couldn't anymore. Then I started adding in home workouts. Nothing fancy, just YouTube videos and some basic dumbbell exercises. Eventually, I built up enough confidence to go to a gym. And, oh my God, walking into that gym for the first time, terrifying. I felt like everyone was staring at me, judging me, but I stuck with it. I showed up day after day even when I wanted to quit. Slowly but surely, the weight started to come off. My clothes started fitting differently. I could climb stairs without feeling like I needed to lie down afterward. And the craziest thing? I started to like exercise. Who would have thought? About 6 months ago, after hitting a major milestone, I made the decision to have surgery to remove some of my excess skin. It wasn't an easy choice. There's so much stigma around skin removal surgery and I felt a weird sense of guilt like I hadn't earned my results because I got help from a surgeon. But the truth is no amount of working out or dieting was going to fix that skin and honestly, it was holding me back. It made me self-conscious and it was uncomfortable. The recovery process was rough. I won't sugarcoat it. There were drains, there was pain, and there were days when I wondered if I'd made a mistake. But once I healed and saw the results, wow, it felt like I was finally seeing the version of myself I'd been working so hard to become. Right now, I'm at the best place I've ever been, both physically and mentally. I still maintain a healthy lifestyle, but I've shifted my focus. I'm no longer obsessed with the number on the scale. Instead, I'm focusing on getting strong. I want to build muscle, improve my mobility, and become more flexible. I want to see how far I can push my body in a good way, not a punishing way. Update 4. Just when I thought Bonnie had officially hit rock bottom, she grabbed the shovel and started digging. Buckle up because this update is straight out of a reality TV show. So it's been about 2 months since Sarah went full egg throwing, car keying revenge queen at Bonnie's house. Things went weirdly quiet after that. Bonnie wasn't posting much on social media. The family group chat wasn't exploding every 5 minutes. And honestly, I was starting to think maybe, just maybe, we'd reach the end of this never-ending soap opera. But no, absolutely not. Last week, I got a call from my mom. And guys, she was whispering, "Are you sitting down for this?" Whispering, as it turns out, Bonnie is pregnant. I think I went quiet for a full minute because my mom had to say, "Are you still there? Pregnant?" Bonnie is pregnant. And plot twist, she had no idea who the father was. I don't even know where to begin with that information. Like, girl, how do you not know who the father of your child is? I'm not here to shame anyone, but this is messy, even for Bonnie. Bonnie called Dan. Yes, Dan, her soon-to-be ex-husband. She tells him she's pregnant and that she thinks the baby might be his. Dan, being understandably skeptical, I mean, Chad is very much still in the picture, immediately said, "Cool, we're getting a paternity test." So they did. And guess what? It's Dan's baby. Yep, Dan is the father. Bonnie is pregnant with her ex-husband's baby while actively dating the guy she cheated on him with. I honestly don't even know how to process this information. Like, how do you even write that sentence? It feels like something straight out of a bad soap opera where everyone has dramatic pauses before revealing plot twists. Anyway, Dan is still going through with the divorce because, well, fair. He told Bonnie he'll be there for the baby but not for her, and honestly, I respect that. He seems like a stand-up guy who just got dragged into an absolute circus. But because this story can't have any peaceful moments, let me tell you what happened last night. Apparently, Bonnie and Dan had another huge fight. Why? Oh, because Bonnie is officially dating Chad now. You read that right. She's pregnant with Dan's baby and actively dating Chad. The same Chad who cheated on Sarah with Bonnie. And now Dan is furious because, well, how could he not be? He told Bonnie it's beyond disrespectful to flaunt her relationship with Chad while carrying his child, and, honestly, fair point, but Bonnie just doesn't see the issue. She's been telling everyone in the family group chat, yeah, she's still oversharing there, that you can't help who you love. Like, girl, maybe you could have helped a little bit when you were sneaking around with Chad before your wedding. Just a thought. Now everyone in my family has taken sides. It's like an emotional civil war. My mom and a couple of aunts are trying to support Bonnie because, you know, she's pregnant and stressed. Emma, you need to be kind to her. Anyways, I'm staying away from all this drama, including Bonnie. However, if something happens, I will let you guys stay updated. Update 5. Well, buckle up because this saga has yet another chapter. And honestly, I'm starting to think my life might actually be scripted by a team of reality TV writers. So a few days ago, I got a call from Dan. When I picked up, he sounded off, like that kind of tired voice you get after you've been crying or haven't slept in days. He asked if we could meet up and talk because he needed some advice. Now, usually, I'd run in the other direction when someone mentions advice involving Bonnie, but Dan has always been decent to me, so I agreed. We met up at this little coffee shop near my place, and when I walked in, Dan was already there sitting in the corner with 2 cups of coffee and a face that screamed, "I've made bad decisions and now I need help." I sat down and he just kind of blurted it out. Bonnie wants to get back together with me for the baby. Apparently, Bonnie has been texting him nonstop, saying stuff like, "We owe it to the baby to try again. You are the love of my life, Dan. Chad was just a mistake. And my personal favorite, I'm doing this for our family." Bonnie is still with Chad. Yep, she's actively dating the guy she cheated with while simultaneously telling Dan she's ready to make things right, make it make sense. Dan looked absolutely torn. And, honestly, I don't blame him. He's about to become a dad and he probably feels a massive amount of responsibility for the baby's well-being. But even in his confusion, he said, "Emma, I don't know if I can trust her. What do you think I should do?" I took a deep breath because honestly I wasn't going to sugarcoat it. Dan deserved the truth, so I told him, "Look, Bonnie is selfish. She's been selfish her whole life, and the fact that she's still seeing Chad while trying to convince you to get back together tells me everything I need to know. You deserve better. And honestly, this baby deserves better than 2 parents trapped in a miserable relationship. 2 happy separate parents are so much better than 2 unhappy ones pretending for the sake of the child." I could tell he wasn't expecting me to be that blunt, but he nodded. He kind of just stared into his coffee for a minute and then said, "Yeah, I think you're right." We chatted for a bit longer and honestly it felt good to just have a real conversation without all the drama and shouting that usually follows anything Bonnie related. Before I left, I told him that whatever choice he made, it needed to be for himself and the baby, not for Bonnie's fleeting promises. A few days later, I got a text from Dan saying he'd thought about everything and decided not to get back with Bonnie. He said he realized he couldn't trust her and that it wouldn't be fair to him or the baby to force something that was already broken. Honestly,